Hey, FanboyNation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
You're watching.
We're watching. You're watching Fanboy.
Fanboy. Fanboy.
Fanboy.
Fanboy.
A fanboy, etc.
FanboyNation.
Dot. I assume Tom.
I've been following this man's brother for a couple of years now, and Father Peter Heers of the Orthodox Church. John Heers, who is a documentarian, also has his own reputation, but kind of flies under the radar in comparison, is the founder of First Things Foundation, helped water resources in Mali, has been a member of the Peace Corps for umpteen years, has a master's degree in history and education from Columbia University, and has been all over the world, along with his father, who used to be an Anglican priest, yet him and his entire family had returned to the Greek Orthodox Church following their paternal's grandfather, who was Greek of origin. John Heers, how are you today?
Ah, man, I'm good. That was a lot of nice stuff. And also, my screen is acting funny, but it works. Well, it's kind of like postmodern. I like it.
Exactly. And you look fantastic, so it's all right.
All right. I got my Mets hat on today. Robert, how are you doing?
I am great. We get to talk about the documentary that you guys are working on through crowdfunding, which we will link everybody to, called Christianities, plural, because we have umpteen denominations that keep dividing post-Protestant Reformation. It's an interesting situation in how this goes. I do want to mention one thing to you in this regard, and for our Protestant listeners, I understand you might get upset with this comment, but it's something that I need to bring up ahead of time. So, John, you have converted to Orthodoxy from Anglicanism. And I sit there, and my family has been Orthodox from the get-go when the church was still united as one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. Great Schism happens. Rome decides to be the Catholic using the Greek Catholicos Universal Roman Church. And in the East, we go, all right, you guys can be universally wrong. No offense to our Catholic friends and Catholic relatives. We will be orthodoxo, the right doctrine. So we've used the Septuagint. We have 10 more books than the Protestant Bible does. We get to the Reformation. Martin Luther removes 10 books from the Bible, or 7, because the Catholics combined 1st and 2nd Maccabees into one book and 3rd and 4th Maccabees into another. And Martin Luther moves them to the back of the book. We get to the United States. John Wesley decides to remove all 10 books altogether. And then there's a wave of Protestant missionaries that decide to go to the Middle East and Eastern Europe to teach Christianity. Why would it be logical for someone from our background in the East that had been a part of the canonization of the original Bible with the Septuagint translation to listen to somebody from the West that has an abridged version of the Bible and go, no, you guys are right after you've edited it. We're wrong, even though we've been here since day one?
Yeah, it's probably a bad idea. I mean, if I'm understanding your question right, it's something like the answer is the Bible belongs to the family from which it was born, or from it belongs to the writers, and the writers belong to a heritage, to a tradition, and that tradition is Orthodoxia. Am I getting that right?
Let
me put it like this: as I understand it, the people that would be listened to when it comes to the narrative about the Bible are the people to whom it belongs.
Well, we do know that the Bible belongs to everyone, but my understanding, question is this. I'm sorry.
Hold on, that's a good question. Actually, we could go down that road if you want. But go ahead. I want to hear. I was having trouble with my camera. I want to make sure I got this.
No, but I was saying, why would someone that's part of the original tradition listen to someone that has an abridged version of the tradition and go, even though you're from the origin and have celebrated it the same exact way all the way through, we've now edited it, we've now changed it, we now have a different interpretation than what canonical law and the church fathers have stated. Listen to us, we're now the ones that are right. Why would someone of the original tradition listen to someone that's revamped it?
Well, I think there's two answers. One is you wouldn't, and the second is because they're a human being and they're trying to make sense of their world. They're trying to update something that they've maybe misunderstood as needing updating. There's probably 25 reasons to actually hear them out, but in terms of sort of the reality that is sort of Christ in the world, I think what you're describing is a source I would take as a less important than the source known as the church. Yeah, that's what I would say. I know that you're facetiously asking the question, why would you? You wouldn't, but I wouldn't. I mean, look, let me go back to what I was gonna say, which is the same thing that you're saying, which is, if you wanted to come and learn about the Heers family, my brother and I, my sister, it's really important that you participate, relate, and commune with those living members, whoever those members are. And so maybe that my great-great-great-grandfather wrote a book, but it's still really important that you understand that book in the context of the living family called the Heers family or the Samuel family and so why would I disagree with the family about the interpretation of the book that their great-great-grandfather written? I don't know why I disagree with them. It'd be pretty odd to disagree with the Heers family about the interpretation of their story. That would take some hubris, I think, to say I might know better than you about your own family. The question is what is the Christian family? In other words, where do you find the Christic culture that he promised to leave? Where do you find that? Like, where do you engage in that? Like, is it a building? Is it, I don't know. Is it online on a certain website and not on another website? This is interesting to me. This gets really interesting. I don't know what's going on with my camera, but hopefully we can still talk right through it. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We'll talk right through it. We'll make sure that everything pops up. You'll be fading in and out, obviously, because of technical glitches, but that's all right.
Which is kind of a iconic understanding, right? Like, I'm present, but not totally, which might be the same thing as a person interpreting the Bible outside of the tradition. It's present. It's a type of simulacrum, but maybe it doesn't have the full reality as it would if interpreted within the bosom of the church. Maybe.
You know, and I don't want people to think that I'm attacking Protestantism or Catholicism in saying that, you know, they shouldn't be listened to, because their experience is different than ours, because this is the way Christianity was presented to them, and this is their understanding of Christianity. What I was asking was, if we had the origin, why would we entertain the idea of an abridged version, especially when the Bible tells us you're not allowed to add or take away from it?
Well, can I be a pain in your butt for a second? So, I have read almost all the Dostoevsky canon, and I probably have, but I was realizing I really hadn't dug into the book The Demons, which is about a 500-page book. I kind of know a lot about Dostoevsky, read a number of biographies, a lot of stuff. He's my favorite writer, but I don't really want to read the whole Demons right now. It's a 500-page book. It's long and it's thick. So I was reading the abridged version. I was reading a type of summary of it the other day online because I wanted to remember, or I wanted to understand, but I didn't want to read the whole book. So pragmatism might be the answer to your question. Why would someone do that? Is because the modern version, the version that you're describing as owned by Protestants, is a type of modern, it's built for modernity. And modern people might want that abridged version as a way to understand their own life, because the other version, well, it's the full thing. Then Dostoevsky's like really tiresome, / maybe some of that old ancient stuff is just too hard. You get what I'm saying? And that to me, that's not a reason to do it, but I get why people do it. I think the fullness is found in the narrative that's found in the church. That's what I would say.
And this week we are experiencing the Feast of the Transfiguration along with the Fast of the Dormition of the Theotokos and Ever Virgin Mary. So we are in the heart of a fast and of two prominent events within Christendom. This leads us into the documentary that you're working on called Christianities, plural. What was the deciding factor on this title? Because you know, I talk to a lot of people that are ecumenist in a sense that so long as Jesus is your friend, everything is okay. But when we get to the nitty gritty of it, if you don't believe in the Trinity, how can I call you a Christian? If I believe, as you do, that the Holy Eucharist is literally the body and blood of Christ, and you believe that it's symbolic, how can we commune together if our interpretation of the Eucharist is not the same?
Yeah, this is really interesting. So I'll start with this. Who do we do a disservice to when we commune together? Let's just say it's me and you. Let's say I got a suspect interpretation. Let's say I'm that guy you're describing who is not interpreting it, what communion is, and you're the person who's got it right. We could still commune together, right? Let's just ask this question. Who would we be offending by communing together? So, like, is God offended? So I don't think God's offended. What I would say is the reason we can't commune together, and in this case, we have to figure out what commune means. Can we have dinner together? It's a type of communion, right? It's an image of communion. If you did not share the same interpretation with me about the Bible and the church and Christ, and we ate dinner together, I don't think that'd be a problem. Do you think that'd be a problem?
No, that wouldn't be a problem. I'm, approaching the chalice would be a different situation.
Aha. So we can keep ramping it up because there's icons and there's images of communion, right? There's images. There's all of these images that take place within the world. They're like fractal representations of what communion is, and dinner is one of the important things. Good. So we're on the same page. Now, why can't I come to the cup? And then I think one of the problems is people who hear that I can't come to the cup and commune with you are trying to figure out the question I asked, which is, who am I offending by taking communion? I'm not going to offend God. That doesn't really make sense. That doesn't make sense. Or maybe you believe I'm offending God. I think that's not the problem. I think the reason that we get stuck in wondering who can commune is because we're not understanding who's stopping us. And the person who's stopping is the priest who has to offer it. And the reason the priest is very careful about who he's offering it to is because that is a part of his Levitical tradition, is to honor, right, what God has given us by sharing it in a way where people have it for their salvation, not for their condemnation. So he's trying to protect me when he doesn't give it to me, because he believes it's God present. God's not gonna be like, I can't believe you communed when you weren't a right believer. That God's not mad about that. That's, if he is, it's a weird God. But the person who's trying to participate in God's beauty is trying to protect me because of what it means to enter into that sacred space. And that's the way we understand the Orthodox faith. The problem is in modernity, everything's about equality. And so once I detect, as an equality person, as a modern person, once I detect you're singling me out as different, I have some I don't know, the mind. I'm getting some mind lesion, and I'm mad because who are you to tell me I can't? And I think it's really obvious that there's lots of people who tell you all the time you can't. Like, here's another one. I can't drive a city bus in New York City. Sorry. I know how to drive a bus, bro. I know how to move the steel around, but I don't get to do it. And if I approached the great seat of busdom and tried to drive the bus, I would be in a lot of trouble. And they'd try to stop me because they don't want me to condemn myself, to crash the bus, and to possibly hurt myself and others. So these aren't like hard concepts, really, but they're hard concepts with religion because we keep teaching ourselves in the modern world that Jesus just loves everybody. And that's like the essence of everything. But there's a lot more involved, right? That's the way I would look at it, Robert.
And that leads us to, I have friends who are Pentecostal and they have disagreements with oneness Pentecostals because that goes into Arianism. And then, with the denial of the Trinity. And then there's, the idea of Nestorianism that continues to pop up, and this very divided, almost schizophrenic Christ in how people present it. And then you have the Jehovah's Witnesses who believe in a type of Christ, but they believe that it's Archangel Michael incarnate, not God the Father incarnate, because Michael means one who is like God. So, how do we come to rectify the ideologies, not only with orthodoxy and heterodoxy or traditional Christianity of orthodoxy into Protestantism, but also the subcategories, shall we say, with Mormonism, with Jehovah's Witnesses, with people that are, I don't want to say, on the outside that are trying to be part of the church?
Well, here we go. So that's what the film's about. So in the end, here's what the film is. Because I'll be super honest, I'm giving you answers, but as a modern 50-something guy who's trying to get through life, and then I sit and throw these special from the Georgian Republic, these feasts called Supra, and I bring a lot of different people to the table in a restaurant that we own as a nonprofit, First Things Foundation, check it out. All of our work is about hospitality and trying to serve other people. We do this around the world. And what I keep finding when I'm in Mozambique, when I'm in Sierra Leone, in the Georgian Republic, in Guatemala, and in the restaurant where Americans come and sit together and feast together and they don't know each other. We sit people together at a seat, at a big long table, and they don't know each other. What I keep finding is that there's always this, what's it called when you open up like a festive bottle of champagne or spark? What comes out? There's that moment of a festive spring, a moment of life, and it's happening. All of the people, regardless of what ideological or theological belief they hold in their head, they're participating in something beautiful. So here's my point. I get confused. Like I don't really know who's a Christian sometimes. Like I'll have someone who's acting so beautifully, who's acting clearly in the image of Christ, who will profess atheism as we walk through, some beautiful place in West Africa. And I don't get what to make of that. And so the film is me, because of my weird work, working around the world, and because it's about me and others who support the project, the producer and the director. It's us trying to figure out in a beautiful way what it actually is to be a Christian. Because I think, Robert, if you think it's really easy to know that, I think you're probably wrong. I wouldn't listen to you.
Right.
Like, if you think it's really easy, like, yeah, duh, you get baptized. And yeah, all right, I'll go with that. It's too easy, though. That's like an engineering mind has decided to tell us that all you got to do is A, B, and C, and it's over. I think it's a very difficult conversation, but it's one we have to have, because in the modern world, everything has been split asunder in terms of the Christian world, because, and I want everyone to hear this, because everything has been split asunder. It is the scientific method that allows us to see everything as a part and not as a whole. It's very hard for a scientist who's trying to figure out all the pieces and parts of any given material reality. It's very hard for them to see the whole. It doesn't make them bad people. They're not good at seeing the whole. And so what we've done for 500 years is we've done Aristotle on Christianity. We just keep breaking it into pieces and parts, keep trying to be the essence. Like, why do you think one church becomes another church? It's because they're trying to essence it out. They're trying to be a little more pure. To be a little better of a part of the whole. And so we can't see the whole anymore. And so this documentary is us trying to go, okay, let's just actually talk to Christians all over the world. Let's just actually talk to some big timers and let's actually just talk to some small timers, and let's try to figure out like what's going on with all these Christianities. So that's the goal of the movie.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it. And you guys are doing the crowdfunding right now through Indiegogo, and I think we have a little more than 40 days left
Thank
for
you.
the funding.
Yeah, so I want people to go. So everybody, it's generally it's been within the circle. My brother and I and Stephen Downey, were the kind of the three players in the movie, and basically we've raised a lot of money by any amount. We got a lot more to go. And here's the thing: anybody can donate to this. It's not a hit job. So if you're like a Protestant out there, you're like, I'm not going to give any money to that. I could say one thing for sure, that the representation of the people that are going to participate will be done in a Christian way. This isn't a gotcha film. Could you imagine trying to get people? That would really be weird, right? Because it wouldn't feel very Christian. Like, Robert, if I sucked you into an interview and then made you look bad on purpose so that I can make my point, have I made a Christian video?
No, not at
If
all.
you think about it.
Right, exactly. And we're not here to pick fights. We're not here to insult anybody. You know, my initial question was to show, you know, from the east to the west, how, you know, the Bible had been edited down, and then the West going back to the East and saying, we have it right, listen to us. And I was like, well, why would I listen to you? But that's what the documentary is going to show us.
But thank you. So this is brilliant. You should say what you said. So the question though is I make sense of what you said. As my answer showed, I quote, agree. I don't think that makes me closer to being a Christian. I think it makes me a possessor of data. Does this make any sense? I possess a data string, which I'll call history. I possess knowledge of it. I don't think that makes me a Christian. I think it might make me rationally sound and a good argument maker. I don't know that that makes me a Christian. You get what I'm saying? There's some transferable spirit that a Christian acquires because God became man. There's something more profound than acquiring the data, because a computer can acquire the data and spit it back to you. That's not acceptable as a definition of a Christian. So then the next one is what is, and that's what we're going to try to find out.
And that's what we're hoping with the documentary.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Now, for Orthodox guys out there, and by the way, there's not many of us. That's why I always like to remind people on the internet. You can talk to Orthodox people all day. You just won't find them anywhere, okay? Because they're not around, okay? I love people who are like, yeah, I talk to Orthodox people all day long. Where? On the computer? Because if you're walking around most neighborhoods, they're not around. No offense to anybody. There's more Muslims than there are Christians in the United States. So, Orthodox Christians. So, long story short, we need to hear. And when we hear, it doesn't mean we agree. What it means is we're present and we're relating to other people in a way that may be really important for us. Not because we're convinced of anything, but because we're called to hospitality. The mark of a Christian is hospitality. That's said, St. Paul just said in the reading yesterday on Sunday. He said, how do you know a Christian? Because they're hospitable. Whoa, you mean they like take care of people? Yeah, they take care of people. And that's a real mark, Robert, around the world. As you know, as a Middle Eastern guy, it's coming from the roots of Antioch and Syria. What is one of the things everybody says when they come back from that part of the world? Oh my God, they took care of us. They're so hospitable. They're so hospitable. What do they say when they come back from America? Everybody goes, oh man, the buildings, the cars, everything's so amazing. Well, how about the people? I really talked to many people, really didn't go to many American homes. It's not really an American thing to invite a stranger into your home. Like, that's not like a regular thing. That's a regular thing, guys. Come to Africa with me. You'll get in a lot of strangers' homes, like fast. It happens all the time. In Georgia, you can't barely walk in the villages without going into someone's home. It's impossible.
So I want to ask you this, because since we're going to get into this, I deal with this with a lot of converts to Orthodoxy. And a lot of them understand the intellectual aspect of Orthodoxy and Orthodox Christianity and the history of the church and canonical law. but haven't quite figured out the spirituality of it. How is the documentary going to deal with the intellectualization of Christianity, which is post-Enlightenment, versus the spiritualized Christianity that we'll see in Sri Lanka, the Middle East, Georgia, Africa, etc.?
What a great question. It's a challenge. So it's one of the things we sit and work on. Stephen Downey, Scooter is his name when he makes films. The answer is it's in the pacing of the film vis-a-vis the images. So we can do it. You know how I know we can do it, Robert? So this is really important. Again, this is all, I'm an Orthodox guy. I know we can do it because we have icons. And so one way into the church, one way into Christianity is through the images. Like, we don't have a problem with that. Like, that's not a problem. But which images and how and when do you see them and how are they utilized? So it's through the images. This is one of the advantages of the modern world, is we can produce some beautiful images. And we can do it in moving images. And I think if we do that right, and our director is very, very good, the images will tell the story and the pacing. So I was at a wedding yesterday at a church, at the Orthodox Church, a Rocourt parish where I go. And I there are all these visitors, right? Because the two people had come from non-Orthodox backgrounds. They become Orthodox. They get married. So they had their families. They weren't Orthodox. So Robert, what do you think you could see? You could see there's a discomfort with the pacing. You could tell that the newcomers, the people from outside the Orthodox Church, were uncomfortable with the pacing because it was taking too long. Because there's a certain pacing that is inherent in Western culture, and it's a fast pace. Even when you're outside of the cities, there's still a fast pace compared to sort of a liturgical understanding of life. And if we do pacing properly, we'll be able to demonstrate, at least on its surface, the imagery and the pacing of a proper liturgical disposition. Does that make sense? So for me, that's actually more important than what we say. It's more important than what we say. And my brother, who's an amazing sayer of things, and they do beautiful work with his organization, he agrees. But his pacing is much faster in terms of the pacing that I'm open for. So there's some nice creative tension there. But that's how one way I think we're going to be able to describe that. Because I think the internet is mostly used to move data and convince people of things. The actual artistry is still, it's kind of few and far between on the internet, I think.
And is this...
So we want to do something different.
No, of course. Are we looking for a theatrical release, a VOD release, a straight to DVD market? I'm one of those people that still likes the tangible. I like having it physical in hand. I like having books on my shelf. I like having DVDs on my shelf so people can sit there and go through and get an idea of who I am because they could see what I'm consuming.
So right now, where we are, we're not movie makers. I'm not a documentarian except in my work with First Things Foundation, which we document and do a lot of videos and do a lot of work trying to describe our work. But I've never been let's call it in the biz. Let's call it like that. And so right now, what we have on the table are really a whole bunch of choices, and we are making choices, but we could use some really good people. And we're even talking about, I don't know if we're calling them co-producers, but people who come in and work hard on this with us to make some of these very difficult decisions. You may be one of those kind of characters. So I don't have all the answers to all of those, but I do know one thing is that we do want to be theatrical in the release, and we do expect to have some big hitters that will allow us to actually garner audiences. Because one of the goals is to meet the needs right now, Robert, that are going on in the world, which are this. There is a return to something profound. So let's just leave it at that. Let's just call it God, but profound. And what's going on is that return is not just among non-believing people, it's among believing people. So a believer, what is that? Someone who knows that there's something outside themselves that's transformational and it's transcendent and da 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 da. I don't know. They just call it B. So Agent B is out there. Well, Christians call Agent B resurrected Christ, but a lot of those people are still in the process of returning. And when they do, they see this kaleidoscope of Christianities. And when they see it, they need answers. And so there's a really important function to play here. So this isn't a niche thing that we hope, all of the conservative Orthodox like, or all of the, becoming traditional Orthodox like. We want this to be a conversation that brings in everybody. Everybody needs to come in. And then have some really nice stuff, some seminars, some live arguments done on, on film, on pod, where we bring back the people we've interviewed to maybe do a more discursive debate. But the film itself is a beautiful introduction. And then we finish by really creating a really long-lasting conversation online. That's one of the goals.
And so how do we, with the film, avoid ecumenism, excuse me, while trying to create the conversation without saying, like how the Catholics described it when Pope John Paul was still alive. Orthodoxy and Catholicism are the lungs of the church. We're breathing life into the church, into the body of Christ. And this one is, the Presbyterians would be the cerebral aspect of Christianity, and so on and so forth. How do we avoid the ecumenism of that?
Yeah. How do you avoid the ecumenism when you try to make a film that takes into account all the variations on Christian belief? Well, here's the answer. I don't have one, except for this. We have to make a film that stays super curious. By that, what I mean is we can't make a film that tries to lead you to water. We have to make a film that stays in the place where we say in the end, this is what I am, and this is what I've learned, and not this is what you should know. And so how do you do that? I think what we don't do is make a gotcha film, but in the end, we make a beautiful film that when people turn it off, they ask this question: I need to go learn more. And how do I do that? And so I'm fighting against a right answer, which makes me the ecumenist in the film. My brother is going to offer and push within the creative elements for an answer. Does this make any sense? Yeah. And that tension itself will create a unique answer, I believe. Because that's been my experience in life, is whenever I say, for instance, can I tell you a quick story?
Please.
I'm gonna tell you, it's a quick story. I was in Haiti doing development work with my family. I was working in an Orthodox church. You can call it mission work. This is the turn of the 2000s, about a year and a half. Learned French Creole or Haitian Creole, da 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 da. So when I was there, I had this argument, this conversation, more than any other conversation, even with Haitians, was with other missionaries, a lot of missionaries in Haiti. Oh my God. We had 8 Orthodox people that I knew in the entire country, 8. And so this was the number one conversation I had. How can you tell them that that they're not saved? Because, as you know, as an Orthodox Christian, what we say is God knows. We don't say I'm saved. Have you taken Christ into your heart as your personal savior? So you're saved. I say I'm baptized. I've been invited. May it be so. I have faith. And they were so mad. It happened again and again and again with the Protestant missionaries there. They would say, you cannot leave these people in this limbo. You must let them know that when they become a Christian, that they are saved. And I'd be like, I believe they're saved. No, you have to let them know that it's true. In what way is it true? They've taken it into their heart they've been transformed. Okay, I'll say I hope so. You see, can you say, Robert, you're saved?
I can always say God willing, and I can say I hope so, and I'm on the path to salvation.
So right now, if you were in Haiti with my Protestant missionary friends, they'd be like, this is such a disservice to these people here in Haiti who are suffering and who are trapped in voodoo. And so you're saying you hope so? That's such garbage. And what I realized is they were closing the loop. So they were finishing the answer. Like, duh, it's over. You know it. Don't. And I was saying, I think so. I hope so, God willing. For me, the second answer is much more appealing. But more importantly, it's much true. It's much more true because I don't have God's mind. And so also, I think that tradition teaches us that we pray and we hope. So this is very interesting, right? I hope our film doesn't close the loop, doesn't close the circle, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm going to tell you how.
Please.
So this is how I approach ecumenism, and not in the sense that of accepting it, but I kind of approach it as how close to orthodoxy are you that I could, be willing to have theological conversations. Like let's use the Olympics as an example, since that's going on right now.
Okay.
All right. If it was, say, soccer, and it's Georgia versus France. Well, Georgia's primarily an Orthodox country. France is primarily, or used to be, a Catholic country. I root for Georgia over France because we're on the same page theologically, primarily. But now France is against the Netherlands. The French are, again, primarily Catholic. Netherlands, primarily, Dutch reformers. We'll root for the Catholics over the Dutch reformers. And that's how I kind of, like, with the interaction, go with it. Similar with how we're the Eastern Orthodox and, we'll interact more, or we interact better with the Oriental Orthodox, even though, the Miaphysite versus, the Chalcedonian ideology. Even with Chalcedon, we're closer to Rome, but Rome has gone so far over with infallibility of the Pope and, Vatican II, and now trying to eliminate the Latin Mass, that we're actually more closer to the, Miaphysite traditionally and culturally than we would be with Rome. And so how do we find the balance in that and open up the dialogue with, say, the Miaphysite or Monophysite, depending which terminology you want to use, and other Chalcedonian churches that don't necessarily adhere culturally or customarily to what we do in Eastern Orthodoxy?
Well, so the how remains, right? So I have a question. Here's one. If we go back to the food analogy and the table, I've been taught from my experience in Georgia and as an Orthodox Christian to see a table as an image of an altar. And then you put food on it, and that's an image of communion. It's not an altar and it's not communion. It's an image. It's a type. It's a typos, right? So if we can all sit around that table, is that ecumenism? So this is a great question, and we're going to address this in the film. I can't argue that that's ecumenism. I can't. I would not argue that you get all the bishops sitting together at that dinner. I'm not there. Now, someone in our world is going to argue that that is ecumenism. Someone is going to argue that. I don't know who those people are, but we're going to get them on our film. Well, actually, we have some. And when they get on the film to argue that is ecumenism, what the film was going to do is it's going to allow you to hear honest and curious conversations, like real good conversations, then with beautiful imagery attached that put you in a place to have to decide. Now, what does this church called Orthodox say about that dinner that I'm describing? Do you know? Because I don't know. I don't think most people know. I do think, though, that most people think that if that Protestant preacher and that the Roman Catholic bishop, if they enter the Orthodox altar in order to share and prepare the communion, I do think most people would say, that feels ecumenistic. That feels like ecumenism. There's some threshold there. Is it the altar? Is it the nave? Is it the back of the church? Where did they cross the threshold into something like a common participation? Well, so you're going to have Christians that go, the whole thing's ridiculous. We want them on film. We will get them. We're going to have common people who are going to just make really good arguments, or bad, I don't know, as per, is that ecumenism? Is that something like dumbing down the faith? I don't think anybody knows these answers. I think there are answers, and someone's going to present them, but my hope is to make it so beautiful in our approach to all of these people that we convince people of one thing, that Christianity in the end is at least partly defined by the way you treat others. Partly. That's my hope. Is that enough? I don't know. I really don't know.
I will give you an example. You know, you mentioned.
Go ahead, please do.
And I've listened to Father Michael out of Canada with Living Orthodoxy, and I like with a lot of things that he has to say. One thing I disagreed with him on was he used Thanksgiving as an example to go back to the table analogy. And if you want to say grace before praying, if you're Orthodox and your relatives aren't, or you know, half of you are Orthodox, half of you are Catholic or whatever, to excuse yourself from saying grace with them because now you're praying with the heterodox. And my mentality has always been you can pray next to the heterodox, but not necessarily with the heterodox. So how do you find that balance without being disrespectful to your relatives who are hosting, when you could either initiate the prayer yourself or pray next to them in either a Catholic fashion, a Presbyterian fashion, an Orthodox fashion, when theologically you're not all on the same page?
Man, see, you threw a wrench. So right now, there's a priest somewhere out there that has an answer to that. The problem is there's another pastor or priest that has another answer. And I think it's really important that we hear this in a way that is respectful to both answers. But in the end, I don't think we know. And the reason is because it was really clear before. I want to give you this happened, okay? This happened with a Ukrainian friend of mine. She would go all the time during the Soviet period to her. She was living in Kazakhstan. She would go to their Ramadan and break the fast with them at the end of Ramadan. What that means is well, you probably know what Ramadan is, but basically there's not a prayer service going on. The prayer service has happened or is happening somewhere, but people are just eating food when the sun goes down. And that's a type of celebration of the end of the fast. And she would go for the food because they were invited. They would come for Pascha to eat the lamb after the services were over. Does this make sense? And for her, after the Soviet Union fell, Kazakhstan had this battle, and the traditional Muslims became very direct with her. And they said, this is not for you. And the traditional Orthodox in Kazakhstan became very direct and said, this is not for, do not go to Ramadan. She couldn't understand why she couldn't anymore. And it was never fully explained. And then there was enmity. So maybe the state of being is there's enmity, and that the real way to live is to simply just stay out of that Muslim culture. And if you're a Muslim, stay out of the Orthodox culture. It's possible that's the answer. I mean that with my whole heart. It's possible that the answer is just a super confederation of spiritual traditions, a confederation, the deepest of confederations. In other words, there's no federation. There's just feudalism. That's possible. That's possible. I don't really know. I know that some of us tend to bend and are inclined toward different answers. I think I'm inclined toward a federalism on this. Toward a blurrier line. I'm inclined toward the description of sharing Ramadan and Pascha the way that she told me. But I'm not inclined toward all the Muslims hanging out in the church and taking communion, and then all the Christians going to mosque and practicing all the liturgical stuff in preparation for Ramadan. So what does that make me on the ski? So we're going to go over all this stuff. We're going to try to investigate this from real people's perspective, because I think there's plenty of Christians pastors today that would say, of course you go to the mosque. And of course they can come into the church and they can take communion too if you have it. There's pastors right now that call themselves Christians that would say that. So there's people out there listening to this right now who are going like this. This guy, John, is such a loser. Dude, it's just orthodoxy. You're in or you're out. And I would just challenge that person by saying, BS. Bull. You're not right about that. It ain't that clear. And it's supposed to be not that clear. How about that? It's supposed to be not that clear. Now, I can already know one person's going to argue me on that. It's called my brother, the producer on this thing. But I'm sticking to it until I find out otherwise, which may happen on this film.
Now, I want to leave you with this. Since your father came to Orthodoxy from being an Anglican priest, and you guys came along with him as well into Orthodoxy from Anglicanism. Your brother, who I haven't met yet, I would love to meet.
Yeah,
Father
let's
Peter at some
do
point. Seems a bit more rigid in his theology than you do. How did you two find the balance within the household of being siblings? And have you ever gone to your brother for confession now that he's a priest, or do you keep that aspect completely separate with a different father confessor?
So good. That's so good. I'll answer that first one last, or the last one first. I've never been to confession with him. It would be, I don't think it'd be a good idea for us. Number two, that would be fine, to be honest, but it's not our relationship, in part because coming up, I was vain, and I was vanity, he was hubris. Does this make any sense? Now, he was also honesty, right? And I might have been something like empathetic, which I think is a beautiful thing. I'm not just saying we were one or the other, but if our vices had to meet, it was hubris versus vanity. Does this make any sense? Mm-hmm. And coming up, we were in a very strong, quote, religious household. My parents were Episcopalians, but they raised us always, every conversation was always contextually about Christianity. You know what I'm saying? On some level. But his inclination toward getting things right, it was frustrating for me. Like, guys, for people who don't know, that's like since he was 4 years old. Like, I tell you 2-second story. I don't care, because he's involved in this film and he's a good dude. And I know he's a priest and I respect him for that. But when he was 5, my parents, my father would go off to church early, and this happened once or twice, but for sure once. And my mother's like, let's all get in the car. Let's all get in the car. I was 10, maybe 11. My sister was 10. And we're like, let's go, Peter. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going today. And my mom's like, get in the car. Let's go. Let's go. We're going to be late. Yeah, I'm not going. So I remember this really well. And my sister and I were like, come on, let's go. Because we know him. This is him, right? He's like a mule. So my mom goes over, he gets on his bike and he tries to avoid her and rides around, goes out and back on the road and back in the driveway. And we're like, get in the car. It's not funny anymore. It's kind of annoying. And he won't get in the car. So my mother says, get in the car, guys. Gets in the car, drives away. We all drive away. He's like 4, maybe 5. And then I'm waiting for my mom to go park and then come back. But she never comes back. She just goes to the church because that's what she's doing. She's going to church. And she gets to the church and it's not 5 minutes. Episcopalians go fast, but they don't go that fast. It's like an hour later, we're still at church. Then we go to coffee hour, and then this little 5-year-old, what the hell's going on with him? He didn't show up. So where is he? So we get home, he's just sitting, he's eating a carrot on the front step. He's just waving like nothing happened. And my mom got out of the car, came back in. We all went in, and she's like, do not give him a word. Do not even share a word with him. Shun him. And we tried to shun him, but he didn't care. Robert, he did not care.
That's hilarious.
And he's like 5. Okay. So how did it go growing up? It went like that. And we got along, though. We weren't, we had our fights. Come on, we had fights. But there was never any hatred. It was all good, but that guy's a blowtorch. Blowtorches will burn you.
Understandable.
But they also do really other cool stuff. A lot of cool stuff. A lot of cool stuff. So,
well, John, it has been a great pleasure talking to you. The film that we've been talking about all day today is Christianities. The Indiegogo is indiegogo.com/projects/Christianities-features-documentaries #. We'll link everybody to it.
oh,
There's
please
still
do.
a little over 40 days left to meet the goal. We're about a quarter of the way there. I hope we get a chance to talk again once the documentary is completed, and to be in touch. I would love to talk to your brother one day to see his perspective on this documentary and how his views are slightly different than yours or completely different.
Yeah. So there's a brotherly love expectation in this where we'll probably fight, but we need each other on this. And the director he's right in there with us. He's a convert as well. So I really appreciate your time. Guys, go give. Don't even look at the goal. The goal's not even relevant. What we're trying to do is get the first staunch in order to move forward and start to shoot the first scenes. We know how this is going to work. We're gonna probably go get some co-creators on this and some co-producers, but we want to be able to get started, and that's where we're going. So thank you so much. Go give some dough.
Absolutely. Go to the Indiegogo site, follow them on Twitter or X, whichever you still prefer to call it, at Holy Wisdom Films. John Ayers on Instagram, John with an H. Where else can we find you? First-things.org, the charity and nonprofit that you work with. That's your brother, Mountain Press, what's it called? And
Uncut Mountain Press.
What was it?
And Orthodox Ethos. Yep. Scooter Downey. Guys, also check out our work, because what affords us to do this is we're a nonprofit. We run a restaurant and we work overseas. We do long-term, 2-year small project development. So you go for 2 years. We're actually looking for somebody to come to Sierra Leone with us right now for 2 years. So check us out, because I think you'll like what we do at First Things Foundation. Thank you, Robert.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Oh, and the name of the restaurant.
Oh, good. It's in Greenville, South Carolina. It's called Keipi Restaurant, Keipi. At the restaurant, we throw the Georgian Supra, which is a traditional toasting dinner with all kinds of Christian liturgical, how should you say, allusions. And they're beautiful. It's a beautiful night. People love it, of all stripes. So check it out. And you'll see it in the trailer. You can see us sitting there. That's part of the trailer. It tells you about that story. So much love, guys.
Much love. God bless you, John. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, God bless, man. Thank you for your time too. And appreciate the shout out. It's a big help.